Coming up on Network Africa, vote counting continues in Benin Republic as President Patrice Talon steps down after 2 terms. Pope Leo begins his 11-day trip to Africa, his second major foreign visit outside the country since being elected into the papacy in May last year. Plus, hospital facing blood supply shortage following accidental airstrikes in Jili, Borno State. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Amarachi Ubani. As always, we begin with major news and happenings over the weekend.
The Nigerian Airforce has launched an investigation into reports alleging that an airstrike conducted on Saturday, April 11, 2026, in Borno and Yobe states may have affected a local market in Jili, resulting in civilian casualties. The Chief of Air Staff directed an immediate activation of the Civilian Harm Accident and Investigation Cell to immediately proceed to the location on a fact-finding mission on the allegation. It comes as the Air Force carried out an airstrike on a village along the border between Borno and Yobe states on Saturday, leaving more than 100 people dead and dozens injured, according to local sources.
I
went to the market on my horse with the purpose to buy measures of beans. When I tied my horse somewhere close to the market, as I was proceeding to the market, I saw a fighter jet pass over the market. I wasn't aware of what happened. All I can remember is that it was closing and then it happened. Many died and those who survived got lucky.
The Air Force stated that the operation was to target suspected Boko Haram fighters allegedly collecting levies from civilians. However, witnesses say the strike hit a busy weekly market used by traders.
I don't know if there are Boko Haram insurgents there, but I know that the army years back settled there to conduct operations and caused problems. The community is just a bush with no houses. People only go there to do business. It's a cattle business and perishable food items where people patronize. It happened 3:30 p.m. The jets fired into the market. Many people were injured and a lot died. I couldn't count the number of dead. When we heard that it's terrorists who hide out, we don't agree.
The incident comes amid a prolonged insurgency in Nigeria's northeast, where military operations against Boko Haram and the Islamic State West Africa province have repeatedly taken place in areas where civilian activity overlaps with suspected militant presence. Still in the West Africa region, in Ghana, the country's energy chamber has defended its decision to boycott the Africa Energy Summit in London, calling for greater control over how the continent's resources are discussed on the world stage.
There is this popular saying that he who pays the piper calls the tune. So because this funding always comes from the western part of the world, they are always the ones who are always putting together the narrative, which shouldn't be so. It's one of those reasons why at the Energy Chamber of Ghana, we were one of the very people who were very vociferous when it came to calling for the establishment of the Continental Energy Bank, what we call the African Energy Bank, which some of us very well believe that when very well managed, emphasis on the diction, very well managed, is going to become a silver bullet for Africa's energy transformation. And then the very last of them has to do with the narrative asymmetry.
The organization says the core of the boycott is the structural exclusion of Africans from leadership and decision-making roles at events focused on the continent.
What this does in the long term is rather strengthens Ghana's position. Why? It strengthens our position in the manner because investors would love to work with countries or jurisdictions that are very strategic when it comes to protecting their voice. And that's what we are basically doing. And this also sends a clear signal to prospective investors that Africa's market is evolving. We are open to investment. We are open to partnership, collaboration. But we expect mutual respect from anybody who would want to work with Africa or our organizations or institutions. We expect mutual respect and also institutional inclusion.
The boycott reflects a broader push across the continent to shift key regional industry conversations back to Africa.
In Africa, we come from a part of the world where about 2/3 of our population doesn't still have access to affordable, reliable, sustainable electricity. But they come from a part of the world where they've been able to industrialize their economies during the first and the second industrial revolution, making use of the very things they are telling us to leave in the ground. And that's not fair.
The Benin Republic presidential election kicked off on Sunday. Finance Minister and Benin presidential candidate Romuald Wadagni took to the polls to cast his vote as outgoing leader Patrice Talon steps down after a decade in power. Mr. Wadagni, widely seen as the front-runner, has the backing of Mr. Talon and his campaigning on preserving the country's economic cause after overseeing annual growth of more than 6% as finance minister. The election comes after a failed coup in December 2025, with the campaign focusing on youth unemployment, healthcare reform and national sovereignty, amid rising concerns over alleged French influence and questions about electoral integrity.
And that's where we kick things off. The vote counting has started in Benin Republic. It is continuing following the votes on Sunday in the West African country. Electoral Commission Chief Saka Lafia said voting had been calm overall, though civil society monitors did report about 100 incidents, including early openings and suspiciously full ballot boxes. Despite the nearly 6 million eligible voters, the turnout for the polls appeared modest in several polling stations visited in the capital, Cotonou. The man favored to win is Finance Minister Romuald Wadagni, the candidate of the ruling party. His main challenger is Paul Humpe, whose campaign has been subdued. The main opposition party failed to field a candidate, fueling frustration among voters and raising concerns about political inclusiveness. Benin Republic's economy is said to have expanded rapidly under outgoing President Patrice Talon, with the GDP doubling and infrastructure projects multiplying. Issues plaguing the nation are poverty rates rising above 30% and security concerns. And today, Pope Leo XIV has begun his 11-day Africa tour in the city of Algiers in Algeria. Pope Leo was at the Martyrs Memorial, where he paid tribute to those who died in the 1954 to 1962 War of Independence and called for forgiveness as a path to reconciliation. The Pope will also be visiting both the great mosques of Algiers and the Basilica of Our Lady of Africa. A ceremony in Annaba will honor religious figures killed during the 1990s civil war, highlighting the country's Christian heritage. The tour is set to be a reflection of Africa's increasing importance to Catholicism. More than a fifth of the world's Catholics are in Africa, some 288 million people, according to figures from 2024. It's one of the fastest growing regions for the Church. The Vatican says its latest survey shows a remarkable increase in the number of baptized Catholics on the continent. The wide-ranging tour will include stop-offs in 11 cities in 4 countries: Algeria, Cameroon, Angola, and Equatorial Guinea. And in all, the Pope will travel nearly 18,000 kilometers, clocking up most of the distance on 18 flights. All but one of the countries have large Catholic populations, but he's chosen a non-Catholic country, Algeria, as his first stop, as it holds deep significance for him. Pope Leo does not have Kenya on his itinerary, but they're sure praying about his visit. On Sunday, respondents at the Mai Mahiu Catholic Church, one of the smallest churches in Africa, held a special mass for him. They feel some connection with the Roman Catholic Church, even though it was built by Italian prisoners of war. The British are Protestants, and they're the ones who captured them in Somalia. Visitors to the chapel say it offers a spiritual retreat away from the noise of the cities.
I would like him to visit our Kenya, our country, because he may say a word or a prayer, because now in Kenya we have so many things going on. So when he comes in Africa, let him come in Kenya. And we even would like to see him.
My first time to discover the place was back in 2024 during a school tour with a group known as Presidential Awards, or the Duke of Edinburgh's National Award. And since then, I've been visiting this place several times. And, sometimes I usually prefer even coming here than going to church on Sunday. For example, today's on a Sunday. I chose to be here rather than being in a church because I think faith depends on someone's perspective. Because like for me, I actually prefer like praying in silent places away from the crowd. So when I need something deeply, like maybe I'm so down, I actually prefer coming here, just talking to God silently, away from the crowd. Yeah, and it has been working so far.
Happening here in Nigeria, the Chief Medical Director of Maiduguri Specialist Hospital, Dr. Shehu Mohammed, has confirmed the receipt of 21 victims of the Jili accidental airstrike. He says the hospital is currently facing shortage of blood and is calling on residents for donations. According to him, the hospital has commenced surgical procedures on victims with severe conditions.
We received about 21 victims of both blast as well as gunshot wound from a town in between Libyo and Dedam. So most of them sustained various injuries. Though most of the affected areas are the limbs, but some have abdominal injuries, thoracic as well as head injuries. So we've started sorting them out. Most of them have been sorted except for the critical ones. So far, we have 21, out of 21, 5 are female, while 16 are male. I think that's just the statistics of what we received. Well, they came in various degrees of severity. There are mild ones, there's moderate, and then the severe. The severe ones are those that are lying down here. They need to be explored laparotomy. They have to be operated. And some have started receiving the operations. So that's it. And so far, everything is available. They've received all the first aid that is required. Some will require certain units of blood before even operated. And of course, we have no problem for now. Well, we expect the public to donate blood. I think at the end of the day, it's blood that we'll be looking for. So once we have enough blood, I think we're up to task to take care of this particular incident. And there may or may not be others that will come in.
The Chief Medical Director of Maiduguri Specialist Hospital, Dr. Shehu Mohammed. We're off on a break now on Network Africa. Still ahead on the program. A special report on the subject of surrogacy in Nigeria. Please stay with us. Welcome back. As the crisis in Sudan moves into its 4th year, fighting still rages in large parts of the country, causing new displacement and extending the daily tragedy for millions of people with no clear end in sight. And since the war started in April 2023, some 14 million people have been forced to flee, with 9 million remaining displaced inside Sudan and 4.4 million across borders. For many, displacement has been a repeated and exhausting cycle of flight to relative safety, only to flee again. Today, 1 of 4 Sudanese is displaced. Violence is ongoing in much parts of Darfur, the Kordofans and Blue Nile state. Recent increased use of air bombardments and drones has sent more people fleeing. Human rights violations continue to occur, including conflict-related sexual violence, forced recruitment, arbitrary arrests and massacres, and more. Civilians are particularly at risk, with frequent reports of harassment, violence and abductions taking place en route to safety.
We don't know when things will change, but we place our hope in God. There are difficulties, but the children go to school. They're learning to read and write, and that's a good thing. It's good to gain knowledge. I did not go to school, but I'm happy for my children because they're able to go.
Ghanaian footballer Dominic Frimpong has died from injuries sustained after suspected armed robbers opened fire at his bus carrying his team, Berekum Chelsea, as they returned from a match. According to the team, masked men wielding guns and assault rifles ambushed the bus and blocked the road as the team returned home on Sunday. Police say Frimpong sustained gunshot wounds and died while receiving treatment. A manhunt for the suspects is underway. The Ghana Football Association expressed its profound shock and deep sorrow, describing the 20-year-old as a promising young talent whose dedication and passion for the game embodied the spirit of our league. The team was on the road back from a Ghana Premier League game against Samatex in Samareboy, 270 kilometers away from Berekum, which they lost 1-0. Ghanaian authorities say the bus had been carrying 30 players and officials when it came under attack by 6 armed men. The practice of surrogacy is quietly gaining traction here in Nigeria, but concerns remain over the lack of a clear legal framework. Lawmakers say a bill on the practice is currently receiving legislative attention. In this report, our correspondent, Kenny Akiwumi, examines the issue from human, religious, economic, and legal perspectives.
When a baby cries, it often signals joy, but for some, it echoes years of waiting, loss, and unanswered prayers.
Had lost all hope. We tried for 8 years.
Just like helping someone to carry a baby, after that, when the person comes back, you hand over the baby to the person.
In northern part of Nigeria, surrogacy is totally prohibited.
It's a very good one for people that are finding it very difficult to have children.
In Nigeria, surrogacy is emerging as an alternative path to parenthood, driven by various factors such as infertility, social pressure, and rising demand among both married and single parents. The World Health Organization estimates that 1 in 6 couples globally struggle with infertility, a reality many Nigerians face quietly.
If a patient presents with infertility and they go to the doctor and the doctor says they need a donor, it doesn't mean that we are harvesting the donor's eggs so that she wouldn't have any to use for herself.
Surrogacy advocate Nancy Ume, who has been vocal about the practice, says surrogacy became a last option.
We started trying and we discovered that something was wrong. Miscarriages started happening shortly after we got my period to come back. But yeah, it was the miscarriages that eventually led us into several rounds of IVF and eventually surrogacy when we discovered that it was my uterus that was not allowing the baby stay. At the time, I would do different procedures. I would get acupuncture. I would, change my style, my diet. I would do, no fish this month, no meat this month, and just hoping that, that would fix my uterus.
Behind every surrogacy journey is not just science. For these surrogates whose identity has been concealed, it is a deeply personal choice.
My motivation for being a surrogate was that I feel like helping the couples that doesn't have a child because I know what they go through. So I just feel like helping them, bringing that joy into their home and letting them feel the joy of having a child in their home.
For surrogates, the misconception is that you're snatching the baby of a surrogate and giving it to someone else. This is not a baby-making factory. So we're using the eggs and the sperm of the patient, the intending parent, and fertilizing it in the lab, putting the developed embryos into the surrogate so she can incubate and carry the baby.
Religious opinions on surrogacy differ. What is acceptable to some is considered forbidding to others.
That's why the church is in tune with anything that will make more people to be happy. And if surrogacy is the way out, we should encourage such.
It's like renting a womb. So Islam, vehemently in Islam, it is haram. Islam does not encourage such, and it doesn't support it. Islam is at home with adoption.
Experts say surrogacy is an emotional journey shaped by hope, sacrifice, and sometimes stigma.
Like Nigeria, surrogacy can attract whispers. Whispers like, how can she carry another person's child? Or she sold her womb.
If eventually the baby grow up, who is his rightful parent?
For somebody not to have a child for 10 years, for 20 years, for 25 years, you may not appreciate what they are passing through.
Surrogacy comes with a significant financial cost, making it a path that is often out of reach for many.
Surrogacy, I would say, on the average, would cost between 18 to 20 million. And of course, the surrogate would get a chunk of that money as to address the welfare.
Did you know Nigeria has no clear law guiding surrogacy, and that's raising ethical questions about the potential exploitation of women and girls from low-income communities? Now, the big question is, will Nigeria take a cue from countries like South Africa and finally open the door to regulated legal surrogacy?
Yes, the South African law may serve as a benchmark. But of course, in developing our legislature, we look at our culture and anything that surrounds it.
There is no specific regulations or law that says surrogacy contract is illegal. And at the same time, there is no enabling law that says that you can derive any remedy, any form of remedy whatsoever from that kind of arrangements.
Currently, we have a bill that has even gone through public hearing. And then very soon when we resume, the bill is going to be it has been laid in the House, then we'll go to the third reading where there will be a debate on the bill.
More Nigerians turn to surrogacy. Lawmakers say efforts are on the way to regulate the process. But until the bill becomes law, the concerns remain for intended parents and for the women who carry these pregnancies. Kenny Akinwumi, Channels Television News.
And as we end the program, here's a fun fact. Did you know that South Africa is the only country in Africa with a clearly defined legal framework regulating surrogacy, where only altruistic arrangements are permitted, and every agreement must receive court approval before conception, making it the continent's most structured and closely monitored system for practice? Well, now you know. That's the program today. Thanks for watching. I'm Amarachi Ubani.